This is the video explaining the sentence diagram assignment from week 4. We have now added new patterns 6 through 10. Those are all based on action verbs. If you notice, the patterns are based on verbs. The first 3 are be verbs, 4 and 5 are linking, and then 6 through 10 are action verbs. I also recommend that you keep your sentence pattern cheat sheet in front of you while you do this, because even as many times as I've done this, I still sometimes have a mental block and I get things confused or forget. So it's a handy reference to use. One thing I've done for you this week that might be helpful is I've parsed the sentences for you. So I've basically written above the sentences what the part of speech is that we're talking about. If it's a prepositional phrase, I haven't done each one, but just identify the prepositional phrase and what question it's answering. So hopefully that will kind of, as we get with more complex sentences and dealing with different patterns, that will help you kind of make your way through this. Again, I start with subject and verb and kind of ignore everything else for the time being. So cat is our subject and the action it is doing is sits. So we have cat sits. And then we have a prepositional phrase and another prepositional phrase and some other stuff. So our basic elements here are cat sits. Then let's backtrack and just go from the beginning of the sentence. Sometimes is an adverb. It's answering a when question. So that makes it an adverb going below the verb, sometimes. Possessive is modifying cat, so that goes below the subject. And then we have 2 prepositional phrases. This first one is on their tree house, and that is answering the question where. So that's an adverb question. It's going to be diagrammed below the verb. Again, the preposition goes on the slant. Treehouse we're considering as one unit. Some of you might be tempted, and this wouldn't necessarily be wrong, to put tree as a modifier under house as an adjective. But usually when we say it, we say treehouse. It even sounds like one word, so we treat it as one unit. So that's the noun. And then the possessive goes below treehouse there. And then for a whole day is answering, again, a time question. It's when. And so that goes below the verb as well. Preposition on the slant, noun on the horizontal, and the 2 modifiers below. Here we have water is our subject. That's our noun. Then we have 2 prepositional phrases, which we're going to skip until we get to the verb. This is a be verb. So we know it's going to be patterns 1 through 3. And then we get to the end and we have an adjective as the subjective complement, modifying water. So we have subject, be verb, adjective, makes that a pattern 2. Then I can backtrack, put in my definite article. We have a prepositional phrase in the middle talking about where the water is. And because it's where, that's an adverb question, so it goes below the verb was. And then of the river, we're clarifying middle, the middle of what? So we're talking about which middle. That's an adjective question, so that is modifying the noun middle, and it is diagrammed below that. Preposition on the slant, noun on the horizontal, modifiers below. This next one we have hands as our subject. Smell is one of those verbs of sense, which makes it a linking verb. And then we have an adjective and a prepositional phrase. So we have subject, hands, linking verb, smell, adjective is the subjective complement, which makes that a pattern 4. We put in our possessive for hands, and then because of these onions is answering the question why. Again, that's an adverb question, so it's diagrammed below the verb. Because of are our 2 prepositions. Our onions is the noun on the horizontal, and these is the modifier that goes below the noun. We start with the prepositional phrase here, which we're going to skip for the moment. So we jump to our subject, which is Janet. We have 2 verbs, will, become. Our main verb is become, and that is one of those linking verbs. And then we scan the sentence and we get to a noun, cellist. So our main elements here are Janet is the subject, become, will, become is our verb, but become, the main verb, is a linking verb, which makes it pattern 4 or 5. And then we get to the noun cellist, and we know that it is a pattern 5 because pattern 5 has the noun as the subjective complement. Then we'll back up and grab our prepositional phrase here. With further practice is answering how she will become an excellent cellist. How question again is an adverb question. So we put that below the verb. And then we have our two modifiers, an indefinite article and an adjective modifying cellist. So pattern 5. This one is a little bit more complex. Pattern 10s tend to be a little bit harder to understand initially, but if you take things one step at a time, it makes it a little bit easier to understand. So again, subject and verb first. We have subject is this building, and makes is an action verb. Makes what or whom. As soon as you have an action verb, your next question should be makes, well, what or whom related to the verb. That helps you determine if there's a direct object and if it's going to be a transitive verb or an intransitive verb. So we do have a direct object because it makes our landlord. There's no preposition getting in the way that the landlord is receiving the direct object of the verb make. So we put that as our direct object. So far, this is a pattern 7. If you'll notice, pattern 7s are the basis for pattern 7, 8, 9, 10. So you've got your foundation pattern 7, and then each of the other patterns adds one element. Pattern 8 adds an indirect object to pattern 7. So 8 is pattern 7 plus an indirect object. 9 is pattern 7 plus an adjective as the objective complement. And in this case, we have a pattern 7 plus a noun as the objective complement to make it a pattern 10. So we've got to landlord, and then we've got this a rich man. So man is the noun that is describing or clarifying landlord. It's referring back to the object. So again, you have that backslash that I see as this imaginary invisible arrow going from man to landlord, showing that's an objective complement, describing the object of the sentence. So pattern 10 is subject, action verb, transitive verb, direct object, and noun. And then we just put in our modifiers with each one, this building, our landlord, and the two modifiers, a rich for man. This one we have Uncle Ira is the entire subject because it's a title. So we put that in the subject slot. Built is the verb, and he built what? He built a tree house. Again, we're treating that as one unit. You might be tempted in the sentence to say, oh, look, here's a noun, children, that directly follows the verb. But keep in mind that there's an implied preposition. He's building the tree house for the children. And I put that in brackets because it's implied, it's not stated. So what he's doing is building a tree house, direct object, for the children, becomes the indirect object. No preposition there, so that slant remains blank. Noun goes on the horizontal and the definite article goes below. So this is a pattern 8 with subject, transitive verb, direct object, and indirect object. Keep in mind the indirect objects are usually people, not all the time, and they're receiving the direct object. So they're getting whatever is being talked about here. So we have kind of this relationship from there's a direct relationship from the noun or the verb build to the treehouse. That's what is being built. The treehouse is receiving the action of the verb, and the indirect object is receiving the direct object. Okay, this next one is a fairly simple one, except that we have a different verb going on. Our subject is Jeff, and we have reeled in. You would see the in and think, oh, it's a preposition, which it is, but in this case, it's part of the verb. It's part of the meaning of the verb. And so that is included as the verb in that little slot right there. And he reeled in what? Because that is an action verb. He reeled in one. The assumption is that the one is standing in for fish, but it's still functioning as a noun. So we have subject, transitive verb, direct object, and then we put our two modifiers below. That is a pattern 7. For this one, we have brother is our subject. Is the verb, and that's a form of the be verb. And then we have, we're ending with the noun boy. So we have brother is boy. Subject, be verb. Noun as the subjective complement is a pattern 3. And then we just put in our modifiers. Possessive, my, and youngest is adjective, modify brother. And then we have an indefinite article and an adjective modifying boy. Okay. Our subject here is trout. And then we have a be verb and 2 prepositions and a couple of modifiers. So we can say almost immediately, subject, be verb with nothing else basically on that main line makes this a pattern 1. So then we can put in our article and adjective to modify trout. And then we're doing our prepositional phrases. At the bottom is answering the question where, goes below the verb. Again, preposition on the slant. Noun on the horizontal, modifier direct or definite article goes below. And then the bottom of what? Which bottom are we talking about? We're talking about the bottom of this pool. So that is modifying the noun bottom. And so that goes off that noun, preposition on the slant, pool on the horizontal, 2 modifiers below. Our subject here is caffeine. And our verb is keeps. Keeps what? Or keeps whom? And it keeps people. Again, no preposition getting in the way there. We have a direct relationship between the verb and the noun, the object that's functioning as the noun. So that's basically a pattern 7 with subject, action, verb, direct object. That noun is followed by an adjective that is qualifying people. And so that is the objective complement, that backslash to show the relationship between the adjective and the direct object. And then we put our adjective many below people. So subject, transitive verb, direct object, and adjective at the end. It makes it a pattern 9 sentence. And now you know all 10 sentence patterns. Sentences will be getting more complex from here on out, but they will still fall into those 10 sentence patterns. So I'm hoping that you understand kind of how they work, what the sentence patterns look like. Remember to refer back to your cheat sheet. It should be your best friend in this course this semester. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask and I can help you.